I get up in the morning with absolute clarity of who I am and the impact that I want to have on you guys, on my wife and my kids. And if the UPS guy shows up out here, right? I'm not looking for fulfillment anymore. I'm bringing the fullest expression of myself just to experience fulfillment, but I'm not looking for it anymore. And I would dare say that most dads have no idea what that even means.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. Many of us in the entrepreneurial world are parents, and today's episode is speaking specifically to dads. Our guest is David Ask, whose upcoming book, The Guardians of Grit, shares a father's strategy to produce uncrushable children. In today's complex social media-driven world, many children, especially teens, are suffering from anxiety or depression. David is here today to share a community and a solution that he hopes will change the dynamic between dads and their children forever.
David, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Well, I tell you what, I'm thrilled to be here. I know we've had a previous conversation and I remember y'all's vibe really well. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Same to you, sir. Same to, and especially for the subject matter. I'm a dad. And so not just being from a dad standpoint, what really caught me about the intro was helping to create uncrushable children, because I think that there's not anything more important than that on earth. But before we get into that, let's learn a little bit about David. We like to, find out a little bit about what led you to where you are right now and this mantra and mantle that you're taking on.
Long story short, I grew up in a little town in Minnesota, in a real musical family. I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, actually to be a vocal major at Belmont. And since then, I've recorded 3 records and I've sung all over the country. In fact, in other countries for that matter. I've got a concert this coming weekend and so on. But in the meantime, with all of that, like a million other musicians in Nashville, I actually started a company about 10 years ago called Quorum Global. And we manufacture the world's first thermostat guard that has a combination lock. And right now we're in about 3,700 retail stores, including the Home Depot and Lowe's. We just got into the True Value hardware distribution chain. And, I tell you, I'm when people use the term entrepreneur, quite often, they might just say they're a business owner, or they may have, they might own a business, but they have a side hustle somewhere or something like that. And it's a funny thing, guys, I feel like I fit the term entrepreneur on so many levels. I'm a creative. I have about 10 different irons in the fire, as it were. And the thing that allows me to do that, honestly, is to have, one winner, as it were, right? So my product is, advancing enough where I can have some margin to do some other things that I'm really passionate about. And of course, that's kind of what I'm here to, talk to you guys about today.
That's awesome. Yeah, you got to have that flagship.
That's so true. And congrats on your career in Nashville too. That's fantastic.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know that that it's a vibrant area there. It's so vibrant, and we love music for one thing. Like we're all over the place, like chasing music everywhere. So
great. What a powerful tool. I did a concert last week with my daughter. She's actually the #1 chair in the Vanderbilt Children's Orchestra as a violinist. And nice. So Catherine and I did a concert last week, and I got up there and I said, we have one goal tonight, and that is to give your goosebumps. And I think I got that from a Nissan commercial, by the way.
That's all right.
But you know what? We did, and we got a standing ovation, and I love, having that outlet, that musical outlet. It's such a different language.
It is.
Oh, how beautiful that is. And no doubt, it speaks to why this is so important to you as a dad to take on this mantle, as Michael said. Tell us a little bit about why, David, you shifted into this focus, and why are you writing Guardians of Grit? Like, just tell us a little bit about, what landed you right here.
Yeah. So if those who know me well know that I like to just jump into the deep end of the pool rather quickly. So, in your intro of me, and thank you, by the way, there's some strong language there with regards to, fathers having a singular strategy to raise, and I love the word raise, which also, of course, is akin to the word rise, to raise uncrushable children. So what is that? What are we really saying there? We live in a broken world, right? We live in a world at war, a war within, a war without. And, you get up on any given morning and we're bucking a headwind. And when I think about this idea, Michael, I don't know about you, but as a dad, sometimes I get up in the morning, I'll be 50 next week. And I get up in the morning and I'm like, whew, here we go again. and I need to recalibrate and focus on, what is it that truly, brings me motivation and so on. So let me digress here back to the fatherhood thing. So Guardians of Grit is again kind of the singular mission where I'm going to help fathers. Basically, I'll start with this. My favorite quote is by a guy named Benjamin Disraeli. He's a former PM of England back in the 1800s. And he says, "The greatest good you can do for another is not to share with him your riches, but to reveal to him his own." So how does that, make us, give us a lens, as it were, to look through, parenting and fatherhood? And I tell you what if, we had, and I'll just say that, for everybody listening, what if we had parents who were full of heart, who were not in survival mode, who were equipped and had a real sense of fullness about them, so that it wasn't this kind of white knuckling experience that many of us had. And my parents are great; they did the best they knew how at the time, and but at the same time, a lot of survival mode. And I think that there was a generic sense of how to raise kids. It was, basically the message, maybe you can relate to this, was don't be mean, be nice, be helpful, don't be a jerk, and don't be mean. And you better study really hard and don't embarrass the family and do stupid crap. And so where am I going with this, right? Again, that sounds kind of, dramatic or even funny for that matter, but I'll be honest, I think if most people were to stop and tap the brakes and do a bit of a self-assessment, there wasn't a whole lot of when I say raise, right, this idea of the greatest good you can do for another is not to share with him your riches, but to reveal to him his own. And to me, the strategy of understanding grit and resilience starts with this. I'm holding up a mirror to my children, with my face off to one side, right? And I'm smiling and I'm saying, "Hey, Parker, hey, Kate, do you see what I see?" And when they're young, and I'm talking, 2 and 3 and 4 years old, you're mining for gold in them. You're validating the riches that you see in them. And so to get more tangible here, it's when you see them act in a certain way or do something, right? You're saying something. You're just validating it. You're shining a spotlight on it, and you're saying, maybe privately, "Hey, Parker, yesterday when you said these things or did these things, I could tell that it was maybe it took a little courage to do that and to step out in that area. And I want you to know when you said it that it carried some weight and it felt good to, your sister, as it were, or whoever you were with. And it also felt, kind of good to me. Like it was beautiful to kind of witness you kind of stepping into a really personal and, meaningful place inside of you and using those tools, right? And using those passions and those things you care about." So I love this idea of, as a dad, shining a spotlight on those things, but also asking great questions. So I'll just keep going here for a minute, and then you can ask some more questions. But,
go ahead.
So, okay, Guardians of Grit, a guardian. I'm trying to describe what does a guardian look like. So we all know, there are certain people that walk into a room, right, and the room gets better, the room gets wiser, safer, stronger, more joyful, and those people kind of stand out. There's something about them that you're like, man, they seem to be kind of rising above the fray. They're and granted, it might be 5 or 10% of the people that we've ever been around. It's like they're just kind of, I don't know, it's like they're on mission, and their authenticity, as it were, is just kind of splashing everywhere. And it's like, what in the world is going on with them? It's like they don't have a care in the world, or they're always looking to help, or give, or there's a generosity about them that is just expansive. Well, to me, that's kind of the, touching on what it means to be a guardian. But then also, it's this idea of that type of a full, we'll just say a person who has fullness, is asking great questions of, their kids or their kids' friends, or, if they're a coach, it's their team, that kind of thing. It's asking great questions like, what do you value the most in this life? We talk about core values quite a bit, right? Hey, Parker, what does your core happen to value more than anything in this world? And start getting a vocabulary, in the English language around some of those things. What are your convictions? If you would hope to have an impact on somebody, what's the Parker-shaped impact that you want to have on somebody? And it's fascinating, because if you start asking questions, like that, and even things like, what breaks your heart in this world? What makes you furious? What gives your goosebumps, right? What is it that puts that lump in your throat? Everybody is going to have a really unique sense of answers to those questions. And what I love about this idea of a guardian then is I'm just asking great questions and validating what they tell me, right? I believe them. And it's the opposite of that would be not asking and being indifferent to them, or saying, you need to be like me, or why aren't you like your older brother, or those types of messages. Like you need you need a hero that you need to look up to and emulate. Well, there might be some things that people are doing that are worth emulating on some level, but I don't want my son to be like me. I don't want my daughter to be like me, or my wife. I want them to be the fullest expression of who they are, so that what? They have that sense of fulfillment.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the, maybe the broader, picture of what I'm hoping to communicate in this book. And we're going into editing phase soon here, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
As well, you should be. Yeah, because I really think, we're in the media, the social media, we're in the internet world, and we've been in it now for 12 years solid. Tanya was in it long before I ever even thought about getting a Facebook page, or why it mattered for anything. I mean, most of my career was built on brick and mortar, and we didn't need the internet. I had a website in like 1997, but I didn't really take it serious until early 2000s, and things like that. But now it's become so prevalent. And, so much of our young people get so much of their identity from people who don't really even know them, and sure aren't going to tell them the truth and help them, as you put it, reveal that truth to them. And, it's stuff that no family is immune to, which is important. And we need to teach our children that, like, your self-worth and your self-value is not coming from comments off of a post you made, or whether you had any likes or hearts, or, all that's not where it's coming from. And because it's such a valuable message, and it's such a valuable message, honestly, in the longer run, if we have young generations that understand that my worth doesn't come from here, they could make that place a much better place. Right.
Oh, I love it.
But we got to build those guardrails around them to let them know that God made them unique and special and purposeful, in the grand stream of the tapestry, I like to say. And what are you going to do to fulfill that tapestry, rather than getting our worth because of somebody else's comments?
And well said. And I like this. It's funny, quite often, and I'm probably going to do this, in the first few pages of the book, is to pop a few bubbles. So, the word identity and the word authenticity are often misunderstood. And they've, of course, in our culture right now, have been kind of hijacked. And so what is authenticity? Where do we get the word authenticity? It comes from the word author. You know what? I mean, so I'll say it this way. I'll speak to the audience. How about this? You did not make you. You
Mhm.
didn't choose your eye colors. You didn't choose your taste buds. And guess what? In the land of the free and the home of the brave, you didn't choose your personality. You chose nothing.
Yeah.
And how do we know that that is a law like gravity? So how many kids do you guys have?
4 between us.
Okay.
Yep.
So when our kids come out of the gate, right? When they're little, and I'm talking, I mean, really weeks, months old, you can tell they're so different.
Yeah.
They're so unique. Their little essence is just precious. And of course, when they get into that, whatever 1, 2, and 3 and up, right? It's like my kids couldn't be more different. Heck, my siblings, right? I'm the youngest of 3. We are so different.
Yep.
And here's the neat thing: when you're younger, unlike adults, when we get stuck in our heads and we start questioning everything, when you're younger, you're not thinking about being authentic, right? You're just doing your deal.
You just
Right.
are.
Yeah,
You are.
you're acting natural. You're acting in your own nature. And then, of course, we start questioning all of that we're not good enough and that we don't have what it takes and that somehow, my desires and proclivities and stuff are somehow not valid because we got, slapped in the face. I mean, maybe literally, but for sure metaphorically.
Mhm.
And then we start questioning all of that stuff. And I'll be honest with you, it breaks my heart. So my story, and my guess is there's a lot of people that can relate to this is, I wanted from an early age, to become somebody. Like I just thought that, largely identity was something that you become. It's a list of achievements. It's what other people think of you. And I remember when I got my product into Home Depot and Lowe's, or when I built this house, literally, I built half of it myself. I thought there would be something that I would be able to point to or somehow draw from this external source, as it were, to fill, something in me that somehow said, well, you've arrived, David. You're finally good enough. And the applause of everybody around me would somehow validate my reason for existence, or that I should exist at all. I mean, that's a bit dramatic, but guess what? The proof is in the pudding. And so many, I would dare say that the vast majority of people are in people pleasing mode. They're comparing themselves to other people all the time.
Mhm.
They're, when they look in the mirror, they look for just a second and look away. They say things to themselves that they wouldn't say to their worst enemy.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? It's so here's what's fascinating. I feel like, again, by understanding authorship, that God wove something into me that is, I forget who said this. I think it might have been John Eldridge when he said this: the same God that made lightning and tigers and tornadoes and hurricanes made the heart of man.
Mhm.
And he wove something inside of me that is incredibly unique, that is virile and passionate and good and kind and honorable. And you know what else? Beautiful.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
much of my life, I got a message that, well, I can look at some beautiful things and acknowledge them. But you know what I'm finding about myself, and here I am at 49, I'm finding that I love beauty. I want to become part of it. I'm one who can stand in front of a painting and break down like there's something else going on here that not only do I want to become, like a part of, I want to create it, but I also want to protect it.
Mhm.
The
And that,
meaning behind it.
yeah,
The meaning behind
so
it.
much meaning behind it. So one other bubble that I like to pop is, like the word identity. Well, what is that? Well, I guess if you speak the English language, it's identifying things that are true about you, that you find valuable, that you find precious and good. And also there's a hierarchy, of things. I mentioned, values and convictions, and what are your strengths and how do you want to apply those things? What is it that motivates you? When you start writing those things down, and again, we walk people through that in a really concise way, kind of a new way. It, you've identified who you are. You've identified what God wrote on your very DNA. And how do you know you found it? Now, how about this? How do you know you didn't find it?
Mhm.
Increased anxiety, right? Apathy,
Right.
avoidance, depression, comparison. I mean, you feel like you're not living the life you're supposed to. You feel like you're not comfortable in your own skin. Well, how do you know you found it? You're resilient, you're
Mhm.
energized, you have a sense of purpose, a sense of mission. I mean, there's a sense of freedom. The word nature, right? You feel natural in your own skin. You know what you're going to say yes and no to far in advance of an obstacle or an opportunity. You know
Mhm.
who you are.
Yeah.
And again, I get so excited about this. At the very end of our course, what we do? We hand people a one sheet. It's kind of this kind of a something that's has distilled all the exercises that we've done down into one sheet, and I hand it to them and I say, "Hey, let me introduce you to yourself."
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And
Love
and,
it.
and again, that's true. That's true north. That's whatever your true north is.
Mhm.
And by the way, I love the idea of true north versus magnetic north. Magnetic north is a compass, right? You're kind of reading the room, as it were.
Right.
Right.
And you're going to get close. Whereas true north is a fixed point. It's
Right.
specific coordinates. And so
Yes.
your true north is something that you get to write down on a piece of paper after somebody asks you the right questions.
Yeah. And the great thing about that is your true north does not equal someone else's true north.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And so the magnetic part doesn't even come into play. It's a beautiful concept. It really is. So you said you don't mind some curveball questions.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So I would love to know, first of all, what's the greatest thing you've learned from your kids?
Mm. So you know what? Oh man, I got choked up here. My kids are awesome. I mean, they're just fabulous people. And again, they're a couple of knuckleheads just like me, but at the same time, they're fantastic. So identity is not created in a silo. It's not just because you were asked great questions. You have to do that. You can't get around it. But guess what? We were made, in the image of Father, Son, and Spirit. I mean, he is relationship. It's not that he is
Right.
relationship. And our authenticity and our nature is galvanized when we are in just deep and wonderful relationships with people. So
Mhm.
I'll tell you a little quick story. So my daughter here a few months ago was just having a hard day, and she's 17, right? That's a tumultuous time for most people, and I could see like she's just heavy hearted. So she walked down the hallway into her bedroom. I just followed her in there and I grabbed her and turned her around. I grabbed her little face and put it in my hands and just started pouring into her. And I kissed her all over her face and her eyes and her nose and her cheek. And I said, Kate, I said, let me tell you what I see. And I reminded her of who she was, right? My kids have done all of these exercises. They know what their core values are. They know what impact they want to have. And here's the wonderful thing, right? Even as the dad, right? I forget. I get up in the morning and it's like, man, this is, we get an onslaught of problems and other people's problems. And I mean, you name it, right? Everything from supply chain management to cost increases to I've got to sing at a funeral on Thursday. And, and a woman who died at 53 years old of cancer and she leaves 6 kids behind.
Mm.
I mean, just hard stuff, right? And we if you're anything like me, you just get kind of overwhelmed in this and that. So to your question, what have I learned from my kids? I've learned that they can even love their dad. You know what I mean? They don't need to be the parent, right? I'm the parent here. I get that. At the same time, they're teenagers. My son is 18. He's in his first year in college. And I can't tell you how many times, that they'll stop and say, hey, Dad, are you okay?
Oh, that's fantastic.
And they'll sit me down, what's going on? And part
Mhm.
of it is because, of course, I've taught them, or Lisa and I have taught them how to do that. But what I think is fascinating is what is our deepest longing in life? Here now we're going to get really into the deep end of the pool. Our deepest longing is to be known. I mean, like
Mm.
absolutely everything about us to be completely known and what? Completely, I'll say it this way, delighted in.
Yeah.
But what's our biggest fear? To be completely known and rejected.
And
Rejection.
rejected. Yeah.
Mhm.
Of course.
And I love the fact that, in our home, we've created massive, and this is in Dr. Andy's term, psychological safety, right? There is absolutely nothing that would scare us away. I try to do that for everybody. And in fact, when my kids are talking and they're just kind of, getting stuff out, right? Just kind of venting, clearing, whatever you want to call it. We just shut up and listen. We don't try to fix one another. It's just get it out. You're safe here. You can do no wrong. And, but I love the fact that my kids at 17 and 18, they're looking at me now and like, Hey, Dad, you having a hard day? What's up? And it's to love and to be loved, right? That is just the greatest gift you can give anybody. And to be in relationship, that's what relationship looks like.
It should. That's for sure. Yeah. Let me ask you this. What do you feel is the greatest obstacles that dads are facing these days when it comes to raising children, other than it being okay they're out of the household?
Yeah. So, I'll kind of start with well, this is a bit clinical, but honestly, self-awareness. Like they weren't raised, they were told that the definition of success was, and it's funny, another John Eldridge, he says that most men's definition of success by the time they, retire or die or whatever is, whew, at least I didn't completely blow it. But isn't it crazy to think, I think that's largely true. And it's because they were not raised, they were provided for, they were given some food and shelter, and maybe they were told how to work and, stick with something, but the inner locus of control, as it were, was not instilled. That self-agency was not instilled. It was more about, I guess I got to do stuff so I don't look like an idiot. And it, is this extrinsic motivation, as opposed to, I'm David Osk. I get up in the morning with absolute clarity of who I am and the impact that I want to have on you guys, on my wife and my kids. And if the UPS guy shows up out here, right? I'm not looking for fulfillment anymore. I'm bringing the fullest expression of myself just to experience fulfillment, but I'm not looking for it anymore. And I would dare say that most dads have no idea what that even means.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So
I would definitely agree with that. And it really is. I'm just compelled to say this. I was telling my nephew, I have 2 incredible nephews, and we were having our Easter dinner yesterday, and it was a gorgeous day. We're all outside, eating outside, big low country bowl, just having a blast, and everybody and laughing and joking and cutting up. And something was said about parents or something and complaints. And he says, well, I've got a few, but I'm going to keep quiet. And it was a joke, and he meant it as a joke, and everybody knew it was a joke. There wasn't many people around, but I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, that's why in the Torah it says that the sins of the father are visited upon the 3rd to 4th generations.
Yeah.
But the mercies of God extend to 1,000.
Isn't that great?
Right? Because we're going to make mistakes, right? But if you give people the space, like what you're talking about, to be okay with those mistakes and realize that we can offer that same thing, right? We're all fallible as human beings, but we're not fallible human beings, right? We're not broken human beings. We make mistakes, but if we have that space to be able to say, I'm sorry. And if we have that space to be accepted, then it's sort of like Maya Angelou said, when people know better, they do better.
I love that. And it's interesting. It's this whole paradigm of you can't have salty without the sweet, right? So authenticity, as it were, and having a sense of fullness requires the gap. Being someone who has been raised, it requires problems. You cannot have one without the other. And I think that most people think, that this is really difficult, and that it's, you're all these people are just different, or they understand something more than I do, or whatever it is. And, it's fascinating. It's amazing how some really wonderful questions, love in a really tender and very intentional way, to create, psychological safety, right? So we operate in our family, by the way, when we've got some bedrock rules, right? There's some things some big stones we stand on that are not movable. But in general, we operate with a real sense of curiosity, about, well, I can't quite it's kind of dark over here and I can't quite place my foot on that one yet. Well, that's okay. It might be next week or next month or whatever. Let's keep working in this area, or keep talking about it so that it starts to make sense. And you learn how to walk, as it were, in some of these areas. It's really not that hard. Your identity, right? Identifying those things that are truest about you, not just true, but truest about you. It can happen rather quickly. And we're talking a matter of weeks. And then when you start surrounding yourself, and this is one of the things that I'm really excited about, is the community around the Guardians of Grit. Like, you become like the people you spend the most time with, period. And how do we know that's true? Like the law of gravity, because those of us who are parents never want our kids getting stuck with the wrong crowd.
Right.
But guess what? We don't think about that for ourselves. And it's not that we can't have friends who have problems, right? I'm not saying that, but your inner, your Knights at the Round Table, right? Your inner, what is that movie? The Circle of Trust. It's, Meet the Parents. It's, you got to be really careful who you're taking counsel from.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah. Amen.
I could not agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it needs to be people that that uplift you, right? People that are there to support you. And it's very easy to get sucked into the other side.
Oh, it's very, very, very. We have a friend, raised 7 kids, all of them fantastic. And she used to tell her kids, whenever they bring in somebody new, they'd be like, okay, are they there to enhance your flame, to keep your flame the same, or to put out your flame? Because you really only want to be with the ones that are going to help enhance your flame. Yeah. And it was always, whenever there was a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend, a new friend, a new sleepover, it was always the same question: what are they to your flame? Well, and my favorite word, and by the way, my number 2 core value. So I think in the English language, there's like 80 core values. There's some overlap, of course, in some of those. Excuse me. But if you were to, one of our exercises in the course is, you put a check mark next to the core values that you resonate with, right? Kind of most. Then you narrow that down to 20, narrow that down to 10, and then narrow that down to 5 or 6 and prioritize those. Guess what? Yours are going to be very different than mine. Right. So my number 2 core value is the word inspiration. The word inspire means to breathe life into. And so to your comment about the flame, right? Man, I not only need that, right? We're made to be loved. But I love inspiring people. I'm going to breathe life. I don't care if they're making a pair of new boots. I'm going to breathe life into that idea. Yep. It's just who I am. I love doing it. And when I'm not doing it, I don't feel like I'm alive. I mean, I really don't. I don't feel like there's a part of me that shuts down. But when I operate in that, capacity, man, that's flow state for me. If you want to find flow state, if you want to find the zone, get really clear on your top core values. Great advice.
Great advice. Fantastic. Yeah. And David, you have been so amazing. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I'm going to round this out with just 2 final questions. And one of them we ask all of our guests, and it's just so apropos for our conversation today, because the thing that brings us closer than a lot of things, as families, is breaking bread, right? Is sharing a meal. And so we're both foodies. The first question is, do you like to cook?
Not necessarily, although I cooked twice today, but I cook really simple things like, bacon and eggs or something like that. But I don't love cooking.
No problem. That doesn't count you out for answering this question. Okay. All right. So what is your favorite meal to eat?
Oh, man. Is that like a, what would your last meal be, or that kind of thing? Or
there you go. Yeah.
Or your favorite, yeah. What would you run to if you could only have one?
It's funny. My wife would say, well, yours is clearly like Mexican food, like chips and salsa or something like that. At the same time, I'm a sucker for a really high-end Italian restaurant. So I might go Italian.
Yeah.
Go Italian. You can't go wrong with Italian.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah. Okay. The last one, David, is tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, and if they want to work with you, learn more about you.
Absolutely. So, my website is davidask.com, and you can visit my StatGuardPlus.com page. That's our thermostat guard that's in Home Depot and Lowe's and so on. I'll end it this way. If you go to my website, davidask.com, my contact information is on there. And I always like to tell people, if you need anything, and I don't care what it is, no strings attached, let me know and I will do my best.
Thank you, David. Love what you stand for and love what you are inspiring as your second word, right? Because it's very obvious that you are an inspirational person and that you've inspired your own children and now on a track to inspire many other children and the dads who raise them. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at BrandFaceGuide.com.